You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Inside Commerce podcast, which is sponsored by Centra and also today's guest, Grebban. So as I mentioned, today we've got Anton Johansson, who's the founder of Grebban and someone that I've known for a number of years and spoke to loads about this topic in particular, which is kind of design, creative, and various things around it. But yeah, just to get started, Anton, can you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and also Grebban?
Yeah, sure. So I've been building and designing websites since I was like 8 years old. So I've been always doing that, from being both like a combination of web designer and coder, but also, you know, an entrepreneur, trying to, like most people do, trying to make money online. And today I'm running Grebban, which is a design and e-commerce agency that's focusing on designing and building digital flagship stores for premium brands. And on today's topics, we kind of super specialized on e-commerce design and e-commerce art direction, which is platform and tech partner agnostic. So, you know, we can work with whatever platform, no matter if it's Salesforce or you have this agency or this agency, you can work with anyone on that. But we also build for and doing the code side as well of doing these flagship stores for some clients. And then we usually work with Centra as the number one Centra agency in the world, but we also do Copify Plus and others. And just to name a few things of the brands we work with, for example, Djerf Avenue, Represent, Lindenberg, Osprey London, etc. So that's a short intro to us and me.
Great. And yeah, we'll come on to talk a bit about Djerf and go into a lot more detail on how you work with clients. So this episode, Anton, as I mentioned, Anton and I spoke over WhatsApp at 11 p.m. many occasions around kind of justifying investment in creative and kind of how to approach creative going into, you know, the highest level of build that's focused on kind of elevating the brand or elevating kind of product stories, that kind of stuff. So yeah, we kind of mutually decided this would be a really good thing to cover way before Grebban sponsored the podcast also. So first question, you know, the core of our business, or the biggest side of our business, is obviously performance and paid media. And you look at a lot of the brands that we work with, but brands generally, they invest such a high percentage or proportion of their budget in digital advertising and putting the brand in front of like entirely new customers. And I guess the thing that I always think about is like the experience that they're driving them to, so often a homepage or potentially even a PDP. And it's, you know, it's very different to how you might experience a brand if you go into a flagship retail store. And also you look at brands, I always reference On as a brand that, you know, one of the fastest growing businesses in the world, or at least retail businesses in the world. All of their experiences are so editorial. And it feels like, you know, all of the landing pages that they drive top of funnel traffic to is so just experiential. What's your view on all of this? Like, I know you guys, obviously, design is right at the core of the business. Storytelling is a big part of your offering. How should a brand, in your opinion, approach this around new customers?
Yeah, so it's a super interesting question. And I think we both agree on that people should take care of the customer experience side more and brand experience more, because they put so much money into, you know, both the technology side of business, both the data part of the business, but also the marketing side. But they really don't taking care of this, you know, flagship that much. And I think one misconception people have, and maybe a change people see at the market at the moment is, you know, the e-commerce department has been a data-driven department in a brand. You know, that's where, you know, you do data-driven marketing, you do data-driven analysis and conversion optimization. While I see that a shift a little bit in conception that, you know, these are also the department that taking care of the like premier brand experience platform. Most people visit this sometimes. This is where people meet the brand. This is where you actually enjoy the brand and, create a bond to the brand. So I think people need to, the e-commerce department in general in brands need to be much more focused on the brand and creative side, because it's more of their responsibility than maybe it will be in a more transactional type of business that's only driving transactions. And so that's one thing. But as you say, I also think that the market has shifted a bit. It's harder to drive traffic from Google and Meta. I think it's also how you drive traffic from Google, Meta, and TikTok is much more storytelling driven. So continuing that to a storytelling driven on the site as well is quite natural. And I also think a lot of the brands we work at least are becoming more and more global, and that means that more and more of the end customers you're trying to reach is actually new to the brand as well. So which means that you might need a more upper funnel after the marketing side of things, actually down on the site as well. So that's if people are new to the brand and you're coming into a product page, that's usually not the best way of understanding why this brand is so fantastic for you. So I think just taking care of that problem and explaining what the brand does also on a PDP is kind of what I believe is the next evolution of flagship stores.
Grebban create digital flagship stores for iconic brands of today and tomorrow. We are the #1 Centra agency in the world, with more than 50 Centra implementations to date. We are also e-commerce design specialists, platform and tech partner agnostic. Try our new e-commerce design subscription. Visit Grebban.com.
Absolutely. And I think people forget that with the top of funnel traffic, there's no intent. Like essentially they're reacting to a piece of creative which, they resonate with. It's very unlikely you're driving them to a transactional page is actually going to drive a return. It's more about introducing the brand, introducing collections, starting to tell the story. And I think another trend that we've seen now, that you just alluded to, and it'd be interesting to know if you're looking at this at the moment, but I feel like a lot more of our clients are starting to really think about personalizing and kind of injecting different content based on intent, or the kind of the phase of a purchase that they are most likely to be in, and also that even just the kind of new returning purchaser as well, that they're starting to like really think about adapting those experiences.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of brands have the old playbook has been you sell a lot through wholesale, you build like physical flagship stores, that's how you drive demand. And then you try to get some of this customer online to actually do the transaction online. But what we see today is that it's totally opposite, right? It's most of the funnel to actually drive a conversion is actually on the site or around the site or digitally, and it's maybe even the wholesale is just a transaction and not driving any marketing anymore for your brand or demand for your brand. So I think it's a shift in mindset, but also on how the market has shifted in how you actually drive a transaction or getting people to be a customer of your brand.
Yeah, I agree. And so there's a lot of just for listeners as well. So in this episode, so there's kind of lots of different areas we're covering. So James isn't here to keep me organized. So kind of, we go through lots of different topics in a bit of a random order. But I think the next one's a really interesting one. So I've talked before about this. And I personally, amongst our clients, have definitely seen a trend of kind of retained relationships with providers. And I think there's a shift in the industry generally around kind of like what services people want for this budget that historically has been entirely focused on development for maintenance and new features. But I've personally seen of that budget, a higher percentage being assigned to creative and the percentage being assigned to development coming down basically. So people prioritizing, content and kind of user experience and even art direction more as part of that kind of BAU retainer. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is quite easy to understand why, because if you look at it, a lot of premium brands, the problem they have is that it's so hard to get people to be, engaging with the brand for, that often. If you're a premium brand, maybe you get a customer to buy once per year or once every 2 years. And to get people more attached to your brand, creating more of a bond and making it interesting to actually go to the site like every quarter or every month, you need to be quite active in creating a customer experience or brand experience that you actually where things happening all the time, and where gets more inspiration and more content and those kind of things. So I think that's the need that driving this. But I also see that it's becoming more of a the driver of tech. Back-end tech is more of a commodity these days with Shopify and all this kind, which also means that the e-commerce department can be much more creative with a budget, because they can drive the business development through customer experience, through A/B testing, through also the creative content side, which means that you can take budgets from back-end or even marketing, even though you don't like it, to actually driving customer experience and much more forward. And that's what we believe in. I mean, we're trying to get the tech buddies down and the creative buddies up, because that's what we believe in over time.
Yeah.
I mean, in 5 years' time from now, I think the tech buddies you need to have for building or having a flagship store online will be really low in comparison to today or 5 years ago. But I think the creative side will be super important on that side, because that's really what matters.
Centra is the only commerce platform built exclusively for fashion brands. Over 300 fashion brands run on Centra, including icons like Paul Smith, Djerf Avenue, and Nudie Jeans. Centra solves business logic challenges for fashion brands like no other platform, and they are on a mission to help you scale up rapidly, globally, across all online and offline channels. Take your fashion brand global, faster, further, stronger today.
Absolutely. I think we'll come on to AI in a second, but I often talk about the value of kind of that highest level of art direction and kind of creative thinking generally going up significantly. And I think while, other areas become a bit more of a race to the bottom, like those areas become a really premium service. And so just on that last point as well, like we've got a couple of mutual clients that work with you guys on your design subscription, which was pretty innovative. I think it was very, at the time, no one else, I'd certainly never seen anyone kind of offer that style of proposition. Was this trend what drove you to offer that service, and how do you typically work in terms of what you deliver as part of that?
Yeah, so our design subscription is like centered around e-commerce design or e-commerce art direction and those kind of things, and for some clients it's a lot of conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, and for some clients it's more about art direction, and some for both. And what we was seeing that design was more of a project type of work. Brands wanted to use, you did some work and then you left basically. But what we were seeing with the best clients we had was that they had an always on approach to this. So that's why we packaged this as a subscription. It was quite kind of, a premium type of offering, but where, but the other thing was that, you have usually like advertising agencies or other type of, content agencies, you usually have a kind of always on approach. But e-commerce design as a segment or sub-segment of design is kind of under, it's not that many people that knows about that. Or, you don't have internal designers know about all this kind of stuff, because it's kind of a big topic, but people don't really aren't that much into it, because you do something like once per quarter or whatever. So this is a way of getting the brands doing more always on, but also trying it to be more of a business development and innovation type of retainer, rather than just doing getting graphic production done. So it's more of a innovation type of subscription, which means that you get a strategic type level of subscription for you, where we actually try to be proactive and driving you forward, which is what we have seen at least kind of popular among brands, because they have a lot of things on the plate and don't have time, to do that kind of stuff.
Right. And so I've changed the order here slightly just because I think that leads nicely onto this question, which I find really interesting because I think we've struggled with this over the years. And to your point earlier, when you said taking away budget from the actual kind of buying of media to invest in creative, which might then drive more value, I think that's something that now people are certainly more willing to do, but it's taken a long time to kind of organically get to that point. As you know, it's become clearer as more things become automated, that the creative is what's driving the value. But when it comes to like ongoing investment, when it comes to even going into a migration project and justifying, sometimes via, you know, external companies, but justifying investment in the design, the creative direction, the art direction, like how do you approach that? Because I still feel like regularly I'll get the pushback and like, you know, it's harder to assign tangible return to creative and design and investing in content and photography and whatever else. Like you guys have obviously been doing this for years. How do you approach that?
So, as you say, it's kind of hard. So I'm not saying we, you know, have solved this yet, but I think that when it comes to, at least in projects, you know, when you do a replatforming or, you know, you're starting to be thinking about a new site or whatever, it's usually part of a bigger strategy change or a repositioning type of work. That means that brands usually have a perception of that they want somewhere and they need to be going that direction. That means that they need help with that, you know, and that's usually the justification of it. The other side is much harder, I would say, when it's, you know, they have a site. So how do they actually, you know, taking that to new levels? I think that's where I think how I approach it usually is that I talk a lot about, you know, if this will be a web app or a mobile app, wouldn't I, you know, continuously trying to make it more interactive, you know, trying to be more time on site, for example? Wouldn't that be more interesting? You know, why do I want daily active users, not just, you know, quarterly active users? And I think that's how I see it. You know, the e-commerce site today is like mobile apps. You know, it's a lot of interactivity. It's a lot about getting people involved in the site and creating something to do on the site. And that's maybe a reference I try to have, you know, why don't try to get people to be here much more and make it interesting to be here?
Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. And I think I always find it really frustrating when we've worked with larger businesses and they've got a culture of, you know, if we want to invest money, we have to see a return and we have to build a business case. Yeah, they'll go and refit out their retail store and they'll have like unlimited budget. And, you know, there's no way of measuring that. I think, yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and I've certainly struggled with it at points.
But one added point to that, I mean, one thing that we've seen is quite interesting because a lot of brands sitting on, you know, old legacy platforms, you know, they can't change replatforming in the next 2 years, so they can't, you know, do this kind of tech projects because, you know, somewhere in the world has decided that they need to have this, and they feel kind of, you know, they want, you know, to refresh things. So that has also been kind of when we have come in and say, okay, but let's refresh the site from a design perspective. You can still use the same tech, but the customer will feel that it's a total new site. So that's also a way of, you know, getting brands to invest in it, because they might, you know, refresh things without actually changing technology, which is the most costly thing you can do, basically. So that's also a way, you know, change, but not changing by technology. I think that's in itself is a way of saving money.
That makes sense. And then you can't really do a podcast episode nowadays without talking about AI. And yeah, you know, James and I always reluctantly end up talking about it around all the topics we cover. We've talked about the value of kind of creative thinking and how that is likely to go up. But where does AI fit into design, do you think? And how does that change over the next few years?
So in a couple of things, if we start with like the first perspective, like in a few years' time, there will be, you know, AI agents for everyone that, you know, help you with the copying and everything, you know, rational, you know, can you help me buy this product in the cheapest way possible so I can get it home the best way possible? That's something that an AI definitely will help you with, which means that, you know, the copying experience or like the frictionless experience of buying something will be you will be, having AIs as your target group with design, which is a totally different game. Which also means that, the more rational part of a transaction process will be, something totally different than today, which also means that what brands need to do is, getting people to actually create emotional bonds with people and, creating interactivity and being more inspirational, because the only like part of the sales process you can actually be part of is this inspirational, more discovery type of process, because after that it's basically a really rational. So my belief is that inspiration and creating a really memorable experience will be what you actually do in the design process, and the other things will be more on technology side, making it easy for AIs to buy from you. So that's two of the things. But the other thing that's really interesting is, of course, this also enable a more personalized experience. So I talked with a startup the other day. I mean, they're working on 100% personalized product text to every different customer. So with AI, you can have how many product texts as you want. So if you have CRM data, you can actually have different product text for every product to every customer. And those kind of changes will, of course, be really hard to design for, but also really effective, I think. So personalization will be on a different level, I think. What do you think?
But yeah, I think that's a really interesting area. I think talking about that startup specifically, I've not really heard anyone approaching that with the product description before, but what I do think is, and I'm sure there's potential there for sure, but I do think there's a lot of potential to adapt content and inject content and the type of things you'd currently do manually via a personalization vendor. And, in terms of like, you might at least have a lot of manual inputs into building out kind of segments and affinities and whatever else. And I think a lot of that, or the majority of that, will be automated. And then that kind of presentation level as well can be automated. So yeah, I definitely think we'll see a lot more movement there, both in terms of like specialists coming into the space and also some of the existing vendors. So yeah, I'm super excited to see. And I think that's probably going to be one of the, you already see it. Like James and I did a recording with a company called Made with Intent recently, David Mannerheim, who I've spoken to a lot since as well. He's building a really interesting business where he's essentially predicting intent. So, and then he's like passing that into the data layer, and you can use that, with your personalization vendor and completely adapt the experience based on the kind of how far through someone is in the purchase journey. And there's a lot of AI behind that in terms of like kind of improving the signals, improving the accuracy, etc. And I think, using that as an example, I think we'll just see that every level of personalization and, just more machine learning across the front end as well. So yeah, really interesting area. I feel like we could do an episode on that on itself.
Yeah, and just to be clear as well, I mean, both for Vant and we work with a lot of luxury brands as well. And I mean, we have clients that, go the other side of this as well,
Totally.
no AI, yes, it might be more luxurious to not do any AI thing. So I think there's not just AI in the world, but I think it will be massive transformations in the next few years.
I agree. I mean, all of our premium and luxury fashion brands, I think it'll be a long time before they're moving away from, sitting in a room and manually moving around photos of their product when it comes to like VMing collections and categories and things like that. But I think even for those guys, I think like inline reporting, better usage of data, and just more insights off the back of that type of stuff, I think will still be really useful. But I completely agree. I think it's slightly different for the really considered brands. So next question. So you guys are really deep when it comes to creative, so deeper than I guess the average kind of design and build agency, in that you've historically done a lot of work with branding. I think you still do a lot of work with branding, but that kind of relationship and scope is broader, and that results in you ending up with the discussion around brand versus conversion and UX and like the whole spectrum essentially you're involved in. Can you talk us through how you approach this, and yeah, kind of how you manage that with clients.
So yeah, definitely. So we have like a mission statement called, brand and conversion in harmony. And this is important for us because when we look at luxury and fashion brands, for example, they always want just brand, and they have a lot, to learn about conversion, because it might be really uncool or really unfashionable to be really hard to buy from as well. You might be aspirational, but it's not funny to be taking up your card and it's really hard to buy something. That's just bad, right? On the other side, there are a lot of brands that, really they're still in an Amazon way doing e-commerce that, are a kind of aspirational brand, but they have product images that feels like they will be or could be on Amazon or whatever. So we're trying, to elevate both. And we do this also with a few other dimensions. So in our design concept we use is that, so we're trying, to look at brand experience, shopping experience, and also product experience. So, and then we look at the design from all these three dimensions and trying, to elevate all of these into a product or the work we do. And for example, product experience is really interesting. That's where we usually see the most benefit from us, because a lot of brands are really struggling with getting their product, out there online. They're still, trying to get people to look at them in stores, physical stores, because it's so hard, to actually explain what you're doing or showing it to people and selling it to people. That's one of the topics we work with the most, and maybe you get most value from us with as well. And but what we believe in, really believe in, is that brand drives conversion, and conversion drives brand. So that's in a nutshell what we're trying to achieve with our clients, and trying to work with those in harmony instead of just being really brandy or really something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with your point there around the two influencing each other for sure. So I was going to ask you about references there, but I think actually we can move on to the next question, because I've highlighted Djerf Avenue, which I consider to be one of the best sites on the planet, I think. And one of the reasons why I've highlighted it, I think don't want to get into headless and the pros and cons and the different arguments around it, but I think Djerf is obviously a headless central site, which you've designed and built, I believe. And the depth of feature on that site is so impressive, and the community stuff and also some of the stuff they do around merchandising is so strong. And I guess I think it'd be good for you to just talk about a bit of an introduction to them and how and some of the features I'm talking about, but also how you kind of approach those features and how you've kind of pushed it forward basically.
Yeah, so Djerf Avenue was founded by Matilda Djerf and Rasmus, which, and so it's really built around Matilda basically, which was a big influence before this, and she is from Sweden, but also, she's bigger actually in the US and Australia and a few other markets than in Sweden. And the interesting thing with Matilda is that she's so mission driven. So when she started this brand, Djerf Avenue, it's really was with a lot of purpose, but also with a lot of vision for what a modern next generational brand will be. So basically, it's a lot of values inside everything they do. And so when we got to work with them, it was a lot, how can we elevate this mission statement or these values into even the site experience, because that was really everything they wanted, and they have only been direct to consumer online, so they really need to get this out there. Then of course they have drops and they have a few other things, and from the beginning it was just solving the drops because they had a lot of problems with the old solutions. So that was like the big focus from the beginning. But interesting thing is when you're doing this like value-based design creation, it's so interesting because you actually start to build functionality or design that are purposely built to drive values or emotional bond with why you're doing it. So djerfavenue.com is a lot about showcasing values, not only products, which I think is a really clever way of, selling something more than just the products. And a couple of things there. So, for example, all their imagery is, natural. So they have no retouch, or, they don't do anything with the product images, which is really interesting to do a design around, because it's hard to make it, look great, but still it really looks great and natural in a good way. And for example, they have different model sizes, which is really good as well to, actually showcasing products, which actually drives a lot of conversion. But it's possible because they use like natural models, they use the network for the models, not like professional models. So a lot of the decisions then taken from a more mission value-based has been really instrumental in actually being able to create this customer experience as well. And then, of course, there are this like social type of community type of experience as well. So since the brand is built around Matilda, they basically were a community already before. That was like the starting point of this. This is a lot of people, listening to her, love her, and love each other as well. So it was more of a movement. So they really wanted to go like from a single player to multiplayer commerce type of experience. So that's why we built this Djerf Avenue, which is like a community around, a little bit like Pinterest around the site. And that has been really interesting to, see some. I sense a bit of the future when I look at Djerf Avenue. And I think it's so interesting to see people interact with a brand. It really, they do something around their brand that makes people actually want to be part of it every day, not just when they buy products. And you can be a fan of the brand without actually buying products, which is I believe so clever and so good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I even, as someone that is definitely not the target customer, but, I was playing around with the site a few weeks ago and I ended up spending ages on it because there's so much content to engage with. And I think I was just looking now and there's a user on there that's got, essentially the Pinterest style board where they've got, photos of what they're wearing and like the tags of the products and things. And this user has got 500 followers, and then you go through to their Instagram, they've only got 5,000. Like, it's crazy. There must be a lot of engagement in this part of the site. So yeah, it's really impressive. And then there's some other really good features as well. One of the things that I really like is you've got the occasion-based shop the look. So James and I talked about this on another episode. But essentially, you've got kind of the implementations I like are like informal, go to the pub. This is how you can shop a look. And here's another look, which is more formal. You're going out to dinner. And I think those types of features, and you obviously did the Mild and Wild with Joe Lindbergh being another one, just injects a bit more like personality into the site, makes it a bit more engaging to a user of any level. So yeah, I think that's there's lots of that on Djerf in particular. And then next question. So ahead of this, when we were kind of making notes in a doc about some questions, you talked a lot about dopamine culture. So I basically just wanted to ask you, like, what is dopamine culture and why does this need to be considered when you're designing a website?
Yeah, so this is really transformational, but not that many talk about it enough, I think. So I mean, people are really addicted to dopamine today. People are watching TikTok videos and Instagram and you're on the phone all the time. You get so much dopamine all the time. If you have kids, how addictive it is. 5 minutes with a mobile phone and they want it's really hard to get it from them. And I think that this is super important when you're looking into how to design a e-commerce site in the future. So for example, if you have a really static site, it's so hard, to get people to actually stay on it for that long. If you are early on in the customer buying journey and you don't, trying to get people to get this dopamine into their bodies, it's really, I don't like it maybe, but it's still the reality of today. So, and it's not just having videos on the site, it's also a lot about animation. When we do design cases today, a huge sum of the time we put into these products is how the animation and the movement of the site is actually doing things, but also, creating this this interactivity thing. So even though you might not have that much, movement on some things, you still want people to click somewhere and then do something. So actually, it creates some kind of, dopamine for you, so you stay a little bit longer, because that's what you really want. So yeah, I mean, when we look at in our projects today, it's time on site is as important as conversion rate, and I think we will see it. It's so hard to get people to stay on site today, and it will be harder. So please be aware of that. Dopamine is quite important when you design things.
Great. And the reason why I was slightly delayed unmuting that, so there's a site that I thought was really relevant to that. And I thought it was Bandit running, and it is Bandit running. So I just slapped Connor in our team that found it. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a really cool site in general. They've got a really well-positioned loyalty program, some great benefits. But one of the really cool things about that site is they've got like a counter, and then based on how you're engaging with the site, it goes up, and they've got like a leaderboard and stuff like that. It's really cool. And I think that's another example of, that style of like hyper engaging like approach to UX basically. But no, I completely agree with all of that. Next question. So last two questions now. So one thing, so when we've gone into a project and we really wanted to like invest in the design and front end of the site and the experience, we've ended up fairly often using two agencies, so one or two partners on some level. So one that's responsible for that really like high level, like best in class creative experience, and then one partner that then goes on to build the site. And there's it's a bit of a Venn diagram type approach, because you end up with that phase where they kind of collaborate, and certain things will be reapproached, etc. But it's always worked fairly well. But you guys obviously are one of a few handful of agencies that I know that are super strong on both sides. What's your view on splitting design and build and using two agencies?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in that. And I mean, I think 50% maybe or more of our design cases is with other tech agencies. So it's really, we do that all the time. And I think in general that, going to specialists is usually the way to go. I'm a big believer, in having separate SEO agencies from digital marketing agencies as well. So I mean, I'm a big believer in going to specialists instead of one for all. But I think in general that if you look at the topic, the creative side or the technology side of a project, you can have agencies that do both and do it both equally good. I think we are one of them. But I think that in most cases, if you look into a like project group meeting, and you have a lot of discussions on integrations or technology or this kind of CMS and how to use that kind of commerce thing or PIM question, and then the creative part get 2 minutes of the 1 hour meeting. And so just by separating the agencies or the vendors you use, I think you put a lot more effort into both. And I also think that you can bring in more stakeholders to the project, because the brand manager, the marketing manager, all these kind of people, and also the marketing perspective as well. So that's why I think it could be really beneficial to use two different agencies. Then of course, I mean, you can use the same, but at most e-commerce agencies there are like 2 designers and 50 developers. I think rarely there are I mean, at Grebban we have 30 designers, e-commerce designers. I mean, that's bigger than most agencies are in general. So I think by just tapping into that competence instead of tapping into the 2 separate designers at the e-commerce agency doing both could be beneficial for a lot of brands.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you don't have that kind of creative orientation, I think it's also really hard to retain the best designers and also cover the full breadth of like what you might get from a specialist design input as well. Final question. So this is a bit of an open question, but you often talk to me about different kind of design trends and kind of new things that you're kind of approaching on the design side. So can you just talk us through what you're seeing on that side and kind of other things you're implementing with clients around the design and creative side?
Yeah. So just a couple of like examples for everyone to be inspired by, maybe. So as I said before, I mean, animation is like the biggest thing. I think like e-commerce design and e-com art direction is so much about, animation, how the site is flowing, how the site is moving. So, and more than video, I mean, people are still, implementing videos on the sites, and that's a new thing for a lot of brands. So just go the extra mile and actually look at the animation side as well on the site. So the other recommendation I have is around community and this more social commerce functionality. I think that in the next few years, that will be a huge trend in, trying to build more of a community around the site. And I think that's, it's a lot of brands, investing at the moment in My Pages or, in CRM efforts. I think really taking that a little bit further to actually, getting people to talk to each other and help each other, for example, could be really good. I also think just in general that doing more like really well-designed, interactive, fun landing pages like apple.com has been doing for many, many years is working really well. We have a few cases together, Paul, where we're doing that. And I think it's driving a lot of value actually, to launching that kind of statement pillars of a site, like once every quarter or whatever, and doing that. So that's something I believe in a lot. It's getting viral, and it's getting a lot of inspiration out there. And I also think that, which we see a lot of data on as well, that having more interactive elements, which is not put something in your basket or check out, but actually doing some other interaction, in a fun way or some work way or whatever, like this Mile to Wild and Lindenberg that we did or something else, that's performing really well. So just getting people to do something on the site actually drives a lot of conversion. So that's a few recommendations. Then of course there are always, making things more aspirational and beautiful is always a good recommendation. But I think that like trying to get this kind of going to more app-like type of e-commerce experience, I think that's where the trend is going at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you said. I mean, I'm definitely a massive advocate of investing in creative and, investing budget in like really experiential pages, and particularly when it comes to the new customers, like really, creating an experience which is a really valuable touch point and, really elevates the brand. So yeah, completely agree. And I also think, to your point around native apps, I also think that's been a really big trend actually amongst our clients recently. And I think I've talked about it in the past on the podcast. But I think from a retention perspective, all the data that I've seen around native apps, as long as you've got more to it than purely transactional inputs, they can bring a lot of incremental value and beyond just push notifications. So yeah, I think it's obviously not your point, but I think that app experience is actually something which has really come back a lot recently, and I think can be really valuable to a brand.
Yeah, and I mean, yes. I mean, going away from the standard product grids, like on more pages on the site is good.
Yeah.
I mean, people are used, to product grids. Do something that do something else. It's really beneficial, I think. Today, people don't want an Amazon experience on your site. They want something else.
Yeah, completely agree. Perfect. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Anton. I really enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy chatting to you about this topic. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so I'm on anton@grebban.com. Grebban.com is our site, and just give me an email and let's chat.
Great. And thanks everyone as always for listening. And as always, please support us by liking the episode and following us. James would usually be the one to kind of add this bit. So I think there are some other things you can do to support us. But as always, keep listening and just subscribe where you can. And I'll see you next time.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.